And so he has sent us as his ambassadors into the world, as sent ones. And so that means that we need to take the gospel wherever we are, and yet recognizing, having an awareness that now the nations are here within our reach.
You are listening to Our Urban Voices with Dr. Alphonse Javed, a podcast that presents Christian narratives through diverse voices that impact urban ministry. Here is your host.
Hello and welcome back to Our Urban Voices. I'm your host, Dr. Alphonse Javed. Today, we are joined by RyanMartin, the Director of Missions and Operations with Lightbearers Ministries. Our topic today will focus on the importance of missional awareness in the local church, particularly through local international ministry. Ryan graduated in 2022 with a Doctor of Ministry from Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary, where he also serves as a trustee. He has received a MDiv in Missions, Evangelism and Church Growth from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. Prior to joining Lightbearers, he served for 13 years as a missions pastor in the local church. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So before we get started, please tell us very briefly about your family. I do that with all our guests because I believe family is important. Because of that, your audience will connect with you. They will humanize you as a person first before you speak into the topic of the day. So share a little bit about your family, brother.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So, married to Rebekah. We've been married for 13 years, and we have three kids: Hudson, who is 11, Annie, who is 9, and Hattie, who just turned 6 this summer. All three named after missionaries: Hudson Taylor, Annie Armstrong, and probably an unknown missionary, Hattie Gardner, who was just a faithful church member that was sent out by her church in South Carolina back uh, several hundred years ago to Nigeria, but is kind of like the Lottie Moon of Nigeria, so to speak, for those that are listening that maybe have that Southern Baptist missions background with them. But yeah, she served faithfully there with the IMB. So our youngest is named after her, and we live in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I'm originally from Western Kentucky, but moved here to Northwest Arkansas in 2008, and Rebekah and I met shortly thereafter and married in 2010.
That's awesome, brother. I have another friend of mine. He serves in New York City, and we have known each other for a very long time. A missionary also first with Southern Baptist, and now he was the founder with another agency in New York. And he has also three children, all named after missionaries.
That's great.
So it's a beautiful thing to know. You can always, know when you hear those kind of names, like, oh, that family seems like a missionary family. So I'm glad to hear that. To start off, what does missional awareness mean, and why should churches cultivate it?
Yeah, I think missional awareness is just recognizing really over the last several years where the unreached are really now within arm's reach of us, particularly here in the United States, where so much of, as we have thought about missions in the church world, we think about it in terms of going to the unreached of the world and say the 1040 window or other places around the world where we have to get on an airplane, we have to have seminary degrees and all the rest, and feel a call of God vocationally to take the gospel to the other side of the world. And certainly, I think there are those for whom God is going to call to that. But as John 20:21 says, and Jesus has commissioned us that as the Father has sent me, so send I you. And so
Mhm.
he has sent us as his ambassadors into the world, as sent ones. And so that means that we need to take the gospel wherever we are, and yet recognizing, having an awareness that now the nations are here within our reach, and we have an obligation, we have a commission given to us by the King of Kings to take the gospel around the world. But sometimes that may mean right across our own town and reaching those people right around us. I think
Yeah.
that's important to the second part of your question there, just because, again, even as I was talking with our staff this morning, that the Great Commission is not just for the paid professionals. No,
Hmm.
Christ has called all of us as Christians to make
Right.
disciples of all nations. It's not just, the Great Commission is not just singled out for those who are called vocationally to be missionaries, to be church planters cross culturally. No, he's called us each to be on mission for him. And
Right.
so having an awareness that we have a mandate to make disciples and to be disciples who in turn make disciples.
Yeah. How does missional awareness tie into the growing local international community? Most of us now have in our towns and cities, everywhere we are, as you said, in the
Sure.
US, it's this is what US has become.
Yes.
It was always, but now it's more than ever before. So we got all sorts of communities here.
Hmm.
So help us to understand that. How does missional awareness tie into the growing local international community most of us now have in our towns?
Sure. If you look to a passage like Acts 17:26, where it talks about that God has determined the boundary places, the dwelling places
Mm.
of each of us, but especially as we think about that on a global scale, just that He has providentially brought the nations to us and determined that in these times and seasons, it's important to have a theology of that and recognize that we need to then take that theology and live that theology out in a very way. Just even to take a small snapshot, even here in Arkansas, where I'm from, you think about the fact that we have 130 people groups represented in Arkansas from literally around the world, and 80 of those are right here in Northwest Arkansas. And so it would be a detriment of us as local churches here in Northwest Arkansas to not see a need to be able to take the gospel to those people groups. I'm encouraged even by my own local church that I'm a member of to see that we are being strategic in the way that we are reaching into those communities. We've got two church planters that are within a residency within our local church here at First Baptist Church of Rogers, Arkansas. One is planting among a Hispanic congregation, planting a Hispanic congregation, reaching out to those from Hispanic speaking countries. He himself is from Mexico and moved up here for that express purpose. And then another guy who's from the southern part of India moved over here, and he's planting a church up in Bentonville among the South Asian community. And so that's just one example, and we have a desire to plant, I think, 7 different churches made up of 7 different ethnicities and bring guys in that are representative of those ethnicities to plant churches over the next 10 years among those types of people groups that are right here in Northwest Arkansas. And so, and it may be that the churches represented by your listeners, may not have all the resources to necessarily do that, but certainly there are practical ways that even the church member in the pew can be intentional with great missional awareness, which I think we're going to get to here in just a little bit.
And I want to talk about that. I have a bunch of questions for you. We're going to have another episode with you. Your topic is so important that I want to spend a little time with you. But let me pause there. You raised a couple of thoughts in my mind. First, you talk about the theological foundation. You made it very clear that, at least for the sake of our audience, you made a very, very clear point that we have to have a theological foundation for what we do, if that is missional living, missional community, or missional awareness. It starts with this theological boundary you're talking about, and that comes directly from the scriptures. So I think that's beautiful, defining your boundary, because God has put those boundaries where those boundaries are. And I think what your point is, where God has placed you, that's also where God has laid those boundaries for you, and He's bringing people within those boundaries so you can reach that. So I love that. I mean, I'm just trying to understand from my perspective.
Right.
But secondly, I love this topic of your church, local church, is working on planting churches, especially 7 churches. What is the time frame of that, and where are you getting those resources? What is the
Sure.
time frame? Did you guys discuss that?
Yeah, so we're going to hopefully be planting those over the course of the next 10 years, and we are bringing guys in. We are able to have some connections with some of the seminaries across the country, namely Southern Baptist seminaries. And so we go there and meet with students that have a heart to plant churches and maybe are available, be they married and married with children, to be able to move up to Northwest Arkansas and have a heart to plant churches here in this area among ethnic populations. And so we started out with these first two. Again, one who's planting among Hispanics and another who's planting among South Asians. But I think our next one is going to be planting among Hmong speaking people. We've also got a number of kind of Southeast Asian countries represented as well. And so part of that, even for us, even as we have those demographics represented here in Northwest Arkansas and are able to do local outreach among them, then in turn, we have some partnerships in those particular areas of the world internationally with our global partners. And so we're able to use this area of Northwest Arkansas really as a training ground then to train up and to send out, be they short-term trip volunteers or even folks that from our church that are feeling a sense of long-term commitment and call to the nations, and use this as a training ground to send them to those regions of the world.
That's amazing. And the resources?
Resources are really just coming from our own budget dollars. And so we don't, we're not raising any outside resources outside of just what our members are faithfully giving. So it's a fairly large church. And so we are grateful that the Lord has resourced us with folks that give generously and sacrificially to the work of seeing God's kingdom expand.
That's amazing, brother. You wrote a blog post back in 2022 offering practical suggestions for engaging with the local international community. You talk about visit world religion sites, frequent ethnic establishments, and engage international students. Those are some of the subjects you discuss in that blog. Could you briefly touch on each of those things? Visit world religion sites, frequent ethnic establishments, and engage international students.
Yeah, so these are really just practical ways that the church member in the pew can take advantage of being missionally aware, recognizing, particularly as we live here in Northwest Arkansas, close to a university campus, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in a university town. I mean, more and more you're seeing other world religion sites kind of popping up around various communities. And so just taking advantage of the fact that, again, the nations are now within arm's reach of us. And so take advantage of that and go to places that are represented of other world religions and be a learner there. I'm a part of again, as you mentioned, Lightbearers Ministries. It's a discipleship ministry, parachurch ministry to college students, and part of what we build in as a part of our ministry and our program here is to give students missional awareness of what's around them. And so we take a group of students every semester to the local mosque here and just reach out to either the imam or somebody who's there in the office and just ask them if we can bring a group of students to just observe the Friday prayer service, and then we'll usually sit down with the imam or someone else that's been there for those prayer services and just ask questions and learn from them and allow them to ask questions of us. Again, on the forefront, recognizing that we are a Christian student ministry, parachurch ministry, and so kind of laying that out there on the front end, but also wanting to expose our students to other world religions for just knowledge sake and understanding and engagement. And so, I mean, even for a listener of this podcast, I mean, you could take your family and do that, and just look for avenues and on ramps to gospel conversation out of that. It may be that before you would make that visit, you pick up a resource to read up on just some basic tenets of that particular world religion and be able to familiarize yourself with that, just so at least you've got a little bit of a working knowledge of what they believe and that sort of thing. But then again, just go in as a learner, and it may be that that's just the first meeting of many that you're able to dialogue. It may be that you've got internationals even living in your neighborhood, and you're able to reach out to them and say, "Hey, could I join you one, would be it a Friday, with Muslims, or on another day for another group of people to go and just be a learner and observe their the religious practice and use that then as an open door to share about your own faith. So that's a little bit in regards to that. Frequenting ethnic establishments. Again, we all love to eat and have to eat, need to eat. And so why not take advantage of just ethnic restaurants around town? It's a great way to allow food, be it here in our country or around the world. I mean, food is a great conversation starter. It helps break down relational barriers and the rest. And so being able to frequent those ethnic establishments. When I was on staff at the local church that I served for 13 years as missions pastor, we did a outreach push called Love the City. And part of that was recognizing 10 to 13 different local establishments. Some of them were ethnic establishments, and encouraged our church members to pick one of those and to frequent that place, whether that be weekly or biweekly, and just get to know the servers, the wait staff, the management, that sort of thing. But if you do that amongst ethnic establishments, it's just a great way to build rapport, build relationship with those that work there, serve there, are in management there. And just again, utilizing that opportunity to not only eat and to be a blessing to that establishment, but then also to use that as a springboard towards hopeful gospel conversations. And then international students. Again, I'm speaking from the context of being here in a university town, but obviously, as university students are fanning out across the United States, I have no doubt that whether you're close to a campus in university town or not, you've probably got university students or those that are recent graduates close by, particularly those from international backgrounds. And so even taking advantage of that, recognizing that we've got probably over 1 million international students here in the United States. But the sad statistic is that about 80% of those will never step foot inside of an American home during their time here in the States. And man, what a shame to not open our homes and show biblical hospitality to them, and to use that really as an opportunity to share culture, to be able to use as an opportunity to share the love of Christ with them and to put the gospel on display, and then to even use that as an opportunity to share about our culture and our faith, and then to see those students then sent back, many of them to their home countries, because a number of those students are going to be from places that are hard to reach, many places that we as Americans can't step foot in without a viable, credible reason. And so what better opportunity, again, going back to Acts 17:26, the boundary places for them have led them here to the United States, and we need to take advantage of that to be able to use the time that they have here to show them the gospel and share the gospel with them.
No, that's excellent. And especially the last point you made about international students well, I came here as an international student. That's how I was exposed, but I was in a Bible college. So a friend of mine from my school, she took another international student, Japanese lady, and me with her. And each American student took international students, one or two with them, and we went for Thanksgiving break, or we went for spring break with them, and that's how we were exposed. And I think you're right, that does give you appreciation for new culture. You get to see home because you don't have home. And now, looking back, what I saw there then is same with my own family now here.
Mm-hmm.
So things change, and you want to learn those things as you go to school. Otherwise, your knowledge is limited to what school is. Basically,
Right.
that's your knowledge. Otherwise, you have nothing else. It's more of
Sure.
a dorms experience, and students are students. They're going to act in a certain way, where parents will act differently. Parenting is different in the United States versus where you come from if you're an international student. So I appreciate those things, definitely. But let me take you back to your ministry, Lightbearers, one more time. And I would like to hear more about the ministry itself, and which I believe ministers to students, you said, through apartment buildings, and also provides a discipleship program. Tell us more about what that looks like.
Yeah. So just a quick history. Lightbearers was founded back in 1997, back in Norman, Oklahoma. And the guy that founded it actually desired to see the gap closed in the number of college students that were leaving the church during their collegiate years, but then also secondly, to see the amount of money that's getting to the least reached and unreached parts of the world, to see mission dollars put in and among the least reached and unreached. And so he had a heartbeat for discipleship and a heartbeat for missions as well. And so wedding those two things together really kind of formed Lightbearers. We moved he moved the ministry, rather, I should say, over to Fayetteville, Arkansas in the early 2000s. And we used to own a number of rent houses and did discipleship among college students through that, and then just raised outside funds for mission projects that were, led out by missionaries that were serving overseas in the 1040 window, seeking to see churches planted in those places and among those peoples. That founder has since gone on to be with the Lord, and under our current leadership, we in 2010 acquired a 72-unit complex here in Fayetteville that really kind of helped us I don't say relaunch the program, but it put us on a new trajectory to where we developed a program, recognizing as we began discipling students that so many of them were biblically literate and doctrinally just not as sound. And so part of our ethos is really just to make sure that we, in the 2 years that we have them within our ministry, within our program, even while they're still taking classes and going towards their undergraduate degrees, that we are pouring into them the Word of God. And so we take them through a 4-semester biblical institute that covers Old and New Testament and systematic theology. Obviously, as they live here in our apartments, they're living in what we term house units. And so one student amongst, say, a 4-bedroom unit serves as a house leader. And so they'll lead out each week in house time. And so those students are living in community, doing life-on-life discipleship with each other. And then we also match them with a local church mentor, because we believe that discipleship is to be led out by the local church. And so we don't want to usurp what the local church is called to do, but rather come alongside the local church in that. In fact, our institute classes, which meet one night a week, are led out by our Lightbearers staff or even local church pastors. And then we also want to disciple students during their time with us towards the nations. And so we utilize a percentage of our rental profits to fund mission projects that are leading out towards church planting efforts in North Africa and Asia, kind of the 1040 window area, among those particular global partners that we have. And then with our students, we're able to get them on short-term mission trips to visit our partners to see where their rental dollars are going towards to help fund the work of church planting around the world, but then also give them local opportunities to just be on mission. Like I mentioned earlier, be it going to a local mosque or doing a book study on a missionary biography, or doing a kind of overview on God's heart for the nations, things of that nature. Even as our partners are here on stateside, we want to get them in front of our students. And so just various opportunities that we want to help just bring missional awareness, kind of to bring our conversation full circle here, bring missional awareness to our students, such that as God has a heart for the nations, so too we want our students to have a heart for the nations as well. And so again, these students are in their undergraduate degrees here in Arkansas, but then we also have the ministry also over in Stillwater, Oklahoma at Oklahoma State University, and then also in Starkville, Mississippi at Mississippi State University. So,
but do you have anything over here on the East Coast, New York area?
nothing on the East Coast yet.
Man,
So
and you should
no.
think about it. That's like a very special missions field over there. I mean, I'm not undermining the
Sure.
work of Christ in those
Right.
states,
Sure.
but I think it seems like it's still, by and large, it's a Christian environment. People at least have heard about Jesus.
Right.
It's not totally divorced idea.
Sure.
Whereas in our region right here in New York, Metro New York area, it's like actually literally that's the,
Right.
if you are talking about faith or Jesus, especially Jesus, you can talk about other faiths, no
Sure.
problem. It's
Right.
talking about Jesus is the problem. And I just love the idea. And plus, you have so many universities and schools and colleges, small and large,
Yes.
just in this small Metro New York area.
Yes.
And if you are and housing is one of the biggest issues. And if you have that kind of project here, I'm just dreaming with you, basically.
Right.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
doing.
Sure.
It will be so beautiful, and I'm sure churches will love to partner. The problem with churches over here is they're hardly able to keep their buildings
Hmm.
because everything is just expensive,
Right.
and then real estate is extremely, extremely expensive. But at the same time, these are the people who go to Ivy League schools here,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then they are the one who becomes prime ministers and minister cabinet people and presidents and all the other things. And I'm sure same is true with the international community. Doesn't matter where you're going to school.
Right.
By and large, even if you are an average citizen of a country, still because you were educated in the United States, you're going to be somebody back in your home country.
Hmm.
So I just wanted to ask that question as we continue moving.
Oh, that's good.
Um, so, why is discipleship so important for preparing for missions?
Yeah, I mean, I think just even at the heart of the Great Commission, we see that,
Mhm,
Jesus says that all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me, therefore go and make disciples of all nations. And so,
mhm,
really, missions is evangelism that leads towards discipleship. And then as we disciple new believers, we gather them into the local church. And
mhm,
so, missions is just very simply that. In our world today, oftentimes we kind of broaden that definition of missions, but really, missions at the core, I think biblically, is seeing disciples made and then gathered into local churches, and so that's why discipleship is so important towards the work of missions, is
Yeah,
because it is at the heartbeat of it.
this is what discipleship we are offering if your church is interested, you
Right.
know.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that looks like everything from just discipling through just the means of grace in terms of the corporate gathering on a Sunday morning, as believers are sitting under the preaching of the word, they're gathering together in fellowship with one another, opening the word together, studying it together, singing the hymns of the faith and songs of the faith together. That also looks like meeting in homes for fellowship, for discipleship, for accountability, things of that nature. Discipleship is also looking like meeting, be that one-on-one or in small groups, to study the scriptures, as Christ said, teach them all that I have commanded you. And so part of that then is to not just have intake in terms of the scripture, but then to see how is that going to be fleshed out, and what is that looking like in terms of missional expressions within my life. That be that in my home for parents with children, be that in my workplace, be that on my campus, things of that nature.
Mhm.
But then also too, I think for some that discipleship is going to look like, even what does that mean to count the cost and to hear the call of God to take the gospel to the ends of the earth. And
Right.
so, whether we are sending or whether we're going, we're called to be on mission. And so, and sometimes that means that we're doing both at the same time. Our
Mhm.
church is getting ready to commission 26 individuals that comprise about 10 different units, missionary units, to take the gospel to places like Asia and into Europe. And so, in that regard, we're doing the sending and they're going, long term. But at the same time, even as I'm sending them, so too am I going in my everyday life as well. So,
Yeah. And I think that's the hardest piece for me as a pastor of my church. So as a missions pastor, I was mission pastor about same amount of time, about 13 years.
yeah.
And 11 of them was with a large church. The other two were with a parachurch ministry as serving as pastor.
Uh-huh.
But in Midtown Manhattan,
Mhm.
and it was easy to make that appeal, and it was easy to kind of like bring that focus from missions and turn the focus of missions dollar within the church on what I thought to be the right investment,
Sure.
1040 window and frontline crisis critical situation. So I outlined with the team, not by myself, but that kind of stuff. It was easy, but when you are a preaching pastor or you are the senior pastor of the church, it's not just one thing you're looking at. That's where the connection piece you're talking about is easy to inspire people through the Word of God,
Mhm.
motivate them through the Word of God, show them through the Word of God that we
Right.
gotta be engaged in mission. So they are engaged, but it's sort of like still the problem is it's divided. The mind says, "Oh yeah, I will give, I will do this," but it's like I'm sending, but the piece that you talk about, so you are going.
Right.
Also, you are the one who's on missions to wherever you are. And I think
Sure.
that's where the trouble comes with the local church. We can be really good with, which is great because not
Yes.
many churches are doing missions anymore.
Right.
They have become so introverted or inward focused that they don't even think about that. So
Right.
I've zero complaint about that,
Sure.
but I am concerned about even that kind of growth where you have a lot of focus, longevity in that department where you can look back and yeah, over 100 years ago, we committed to missions and we're still investing, planting, doing these things
Mm.
in X amount of countries. And we continue to give, and we are the only one left around. And when you look around in a certain, at least in X amount of radius, you will not find another church like that who is committed to traditional missions
Mhm.
mindset where you prepare people and you send people and you support people and you have special budgets set for that, which is
Yes.
not inward, it's all gone out.
Mhm.
But yet, problem remains, even though that is done, hundreds of thousands of dollars have been committed to that, yet the reflection of personal, like as you send, you are also going,
Going.
is
Right.
still there. So how you guys are solving that problem?
Yeah. I mean, I think again, it's getting into the church's DNA, this idea that we are all sent ones, and to try to not draw a dichotomy between us and them. Certainly we want to, I think, help protect that word missionary, such that not everything becomes missions, but that we are making sure that we're carefully and clearly defining that term for those whom God has indeed called to take the gospel to cross cultures, be it here in the United States or around the world, to see the gospel furthered and the church established and planted in places where it needs to go. Again, be that here in North America or be that around the world. But at the same time, we're all called to be on mission. And so I think even from the leadership, be it from regular preaching week in and week out, looking for opportunities to um, cast that vision and to even as we talk about missional awareness, do things like build in elements into your worship services where you're praying for missionaries, where you're giving a mission spotlight. But yet in the morning worship service, be that if you have an evening service or a Wednesday night service, where you're highlighting missionaries and just taking time to pray for them, even as you have an opportunity to say have a prayer, a pastoral prayer, or some type of prayer within the service that you're praying that God would send forth laborers, from your church into the harvest fields. And so just looking for ways in which you can build that DNA such that your members are seeing that just because we're sending a certain pocket of people to the nations, that doesn't mean that I'm not valuable in the work of missions as well. No, I'm called to be just as sent as they are. It may be that they're giving their lives vocationally to that to see churches planted, but be it as a lawyer or a doctor or a teacher or a stay-at-home mom, uh, I am also called to be making disciples just as well. And so, how am I living out that great commission obedience to what the Lord has called me to do as I'm faithfully
Mhm.
making disciples, and even as I'm sending others to go do that as their vocation in another context and in another culture.
So, Ryan, as we close out, is there anything else you would like to add to this conversation?
No, I mean, I think I would just encourage those that are listening. How do I build in missional awareness? I think the three kind of key areas that we touched on are very practical ways to do that through ethnic establishments, through going to world religion sites, even through engaging international students.
Mhm.
But I think as well, look for ways that you can do that even as families within your home, around the dinner table, praying for unreached people groups, using resources like Joshua Project, or
Yeah.
different Operation World, different books like that highlight unreached peoples and places around the world, and praying for a different country or people every night, or throughout the week. It doesn't have to be as regimented as as on a nightly basis necessarily. Take opportunities to read missionary biographies even to your children. There's some great
Mm.
resources out there that are being written now, not just for adults but also for children on their level, to help again instill that missional awareness into your family, such that we're raising whole families to be on mission. And then even to look for opportunities as families, as couples, to serve together on mission. Sometimes that may be a local expression through a local food pantry, or through doing outreach among an ethnic church, that sort of thing, helping to host a VBS for an ethnic church plant or something along those lines. But it may also be looking for opportunities to take your kids on a mission trip, and maybe start local, or start somewhere here in the United States, and then broaden that out as they get older. So again, looking for ways to do that, and to
Yeah.
build missional awareness, not just within the church, but also within your own personal life and in your family's life.
Yeah. I love those two practical things as a family. Read missionary biographies, because those are incredible
Hmm.
resources, especially age appropriate ones, where a kid can be interested in a story. And then two, take that, and probably I will add another one,
Mm.
serve here in your
Yes.
local community in a missional context, and then take that person for a global mission trip. I love those three things as a family. If listeners wants to get in touch with you or find your book, what are the easiest ways?
Yeah. You can email me at ryanmartin@lightbearers.com. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram. RyanAllenMartin is my Twitter and Instagram handle. I've also blogged frequently for a ministry called the Upstream Collective. If you go to upstreamcollective.org, you can find some of my writings there, as well as Southeastern's Center for Great Commission Studies. They have a blog as well where I've written extensively there too. And then my book that I've published on missionary care, called Holding the Rope, How the Local Church Can Care Well for Its Sent Ones. You can find that on Amazon, and check it out.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Great. We will put that in our on our website under your podcast. We'll make sure that this contact is listed there too.
excellent.
Our listeners can find all of that, what you just mentioned, our website, oururbanvoices.com. But to close this time, I always ask my guests to tell us a joke. And here's my reason. Sometimes we talk about really heavy topics, and it just helps to lighten the mood as we close. So tell us a joke, Ryan.
Okay, so how many ants does it take to fill an apartment?
How many?
10 ants.
10 ants. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Tenants will be the answer, people, on this side of the country. Thank you so much for being on the show. Again, that was Ryan Martin, and thank you to all our listeners. We truly could not do this without you. Tune in next week to hear Ryan talk about how the church can better care for its missionaries. If you learned something, have a topic suggestion, or would like to leave us feedback, drop us a note at oururbanvoices.com. Be sure to subscribe to the show and leave an honest review wherever you listen to your podcasts.
You've been listening to Our Urban Voices with Dr. Alphonse Javed, which presents Christian narratives through diverse voices that impact urban ministry.